I'm sure that not many other LEGO collectors like doing this, but for us here at our LEGO museum, what we like doing is maintaining sets, which means dusting them and then checking to make sure that there aren't any parts that have been broken off. As always, we'll begin with the Dyson Soft Brush head, carefully working our way around each side of this magnificent, towering set. Now, what's fascinating about this particular model is that there was an earlier, smaller version released back in the early 2000s, and it was a fair bit more compact, probably about half a foot smaller. But when I first laid eyes on this larger, updated version, I was truly in awe. I remember thinking, how could they possibly make a set this large? I mean, each year LEGO Star Wars would one-up themselves with larger and larger UCS sets. However, I still believe that none of the other sets that I've seen in person had me as taken aback as seeing this set at the LEGO store. You'll notice that the set moves quite a bit as we go along with our initial dusting pass, which is a bit unusual for me because I typically keep the turntable pretty steady. But this set is a little bit more delicate, so I'm handling it with extra care. That's where the power duster comes in. I mean, helping us reaching the smaller, harder to access areas that the brush can't quite manage. The brush is fantastic, don't get me wrong, for removing the dust from the exterior, especially with all the studs and detailed areas covering the surface. Now, when it comes to the rear of the set, let's just say it's a bit of a challenge. The intricate details are tough to clean because they're delicate and somewhat tricky to handle. This is one of those sets where you really have to be mindful when building or moving it. The newer UCS Venator set, on the other hand, addresses many of these build issues, offering a much sturdier structure. Even the stand on the Imperial Star Destroyer can feel a little bit wobbly, but the Venator stand is pretty rock solid. Of course, this set still stands as one of the most impressive Star Wars models in our museum. Actually, scratch that. This is easily one of the cornerstone sets in the museum. Let's take a closer look at some of the finer details. So we'll go ahead and start our second phase of the maintenance procedure, which is double checking all of the little, bits, details on the build to make sure no pieces have fallen off and that everything is still sturdy. LEGO sets can become a little bit loose, not really over time, but typically when you're building it, you're not necessarily thinking about trying to push all the pieces as firmly together, so sometimes, pieces fall off and whatnot. So the tip of the bow is very delicate, and actually most of this set's hulls are going to be very delicate, so doing a little bit of a gingerly push with our fingers just to make sure that all the panels are still on. They connect to the actual Technic superstructure inside. Ooh, it's kind of a loose connection. It's not the greatest, but, we just do the best that we can here. So the lower hull panels, I'll be honest, this is the part that I check the least, honestly, but I just know that if they are, if the hull panels have disconnected from the actual Technic superstructure, it would sag quite a bit, so this is just kind of double checking to make sure that there's nothing really sagging all that much. So turning around to the actual engines themselves, these three engines are the most, let's say, a little bit frustrating. The most frustrating part of this set when it comes to longevity, because they are not on very securely. They do not, they don't stick on very well. They can get knocked over pretty easily as they start to sag on their own weight. I believe the Venator actually really improved upon this design, so I'm excited to see that in the future. But the smaller engines, they're perfect. They're on, they're on for good. The Technic connections there are pretty good. But the giant engines, they're really just on through studded connections, so as you know, it can start to sag and fail over time. So the overall rear of the Star Destroyer has quite a bit of detailing here. We just mainly checked the large engines to be sure, because all the other smaller bits and pieces of this rear, you know, if you push a little bit in any different way, pieces fall off. So we just do our best to just go over the top hull portions. There's those little flap details that we like to just push, make sure that they're on tight. Turning the Star Destroyer one more time. Actually, we're going to be turning it a lot more times. But let's take a look at the very front. So the lower part of the superstructure, it's actually pretty secure, if I'm being honest. Like, it can detach a little bit, so we're going to show you that a little bit later. But the overall superstructure here is pretty sturdy, so we can just like push on it a little bit just to make sure all the greebling pieces are still on pretty well. And moving on to the hull portion, the aft hull, stern hull, aft hull. I think it's aft hull, and we're just gonna keep it that way. You see all the greebling elements on the sides of the superstructure here. So just using our thumb to push in to make sure that none of the pieces are, falling off. Actually, off camera, I saw that one piece was a little bit like skew, so went ahead and fixed that too. There's some smooth elements here that, kind of a nice little touch. And moving on to the upper superstructure. So for up here, same thing with the superstructure itself. It's pretty sturdy. So just pushing along the sides to make sure that all the greebling elements are on there all good. The lower superstructure, we took a look at that a little bit earlier, but we'll, just push on the top panels. It's interesting, like with greebling elements, they look great, and you kind of have to make sure that they're on pretty tight, but the moment that one falls off, you have no idea where it went. So it's a long trek to go get the actual the instruction booklet and trying to find out where exactly that piece came from. This center tower here has a lot of nice detailing in the back. Fortunately, we don't have too many loose pieces except for that middle like piping detail. That one's the only kind of loose piece that we have to worry about. And behind the command center, you have the radar array, which has like nice little detailing pieces too. And then behind that, you have the kind of panels, rear panels of the command center. So making sure that everything's on tight, pushing down that radar array too. Luckily, everything up here, that's kind of far away is like, being in the middle of the ship, it's hard to kind of knock into those things. So, the side hulls are pretty much the primary portion of this set that's more difficult to deal with. Tower panels. So on the sides of the command tower, you have very nice smooth panels. These are pretty strong because, they're kind of holding up the entire command center and it's part of the entire Technic skeleton that's inside this set. And you have a lot of greebling elements in the very front. You see some pieces are a little bit askew. I think I noticed that. I primarily notice it when I'm watching the footage back, so forgive me for not straightening them. Oh, I did straighten them. Great, perfect. And yeah, there's a lot of fun detailing up here. That tractor beam at the top too moves a little bit, so just pushing the pieces together. Now we're going to get to some of the moving elements of this set just to make sure that they work well. So all of these 4 turrets rotate independently of one another. They're not attached to anything, they just rotate pretty freely. There's that articulating turret on the midship side of the hull that have 4 little gun pieces. Looks pretty awesome. Let's turn it around so that we can take a look at the top of the command center, which has that tractor beam. I'm not really sure if it's supposed to be posable like that, but it's built like on that with a movable piece, so we're just gonna show that anyway. I'm pretty sure it's not meant to be moved or posed, but what can you do? And then we're gonna start to remove the movable portions of the superstructure here. So the first portion is the lower superstructure here. You kind of have to like jimmy it free a little bit. It's a little bit hard to get off. It's stuck together with Technic pins. And you see that red handle piece in the middle? That's designed so you can actually carry the Star Destroyer. Yeah, you don't really see too much inside. It's just, you just see the Technic skeleton. But we just take them off just to make sure that they're able to be taken off, and whenever you're moving the set, you have to take off those panels anyway. It's a little bit of a more difficult process doing that. So you have the small Tantive 4 that's connected to it. You can also mount it underneath in the hangar bay too, which we don't really do because I like seeing it next to it. Technically, it should be in front of the Star Destroyer like in the New Hope, but you know, we do what we can. So I'm going to go ahead and put the hull pieces back on. It is pretty difficult. It's not the easiest thing to put on. Like, there's two connectors on the front and the rear that you have to kind of align pretty perfectly. And whenever I'm doing this, I'm always going to knock like one greebling piece over. Let's see if I'm able to not do that today, but it might surely happen. I really wish there was a better way to carry this set, but the stand itself is pretty wobbly. Doesn't really inspire you with that much confidence. So it helps to use the actual handle itself. Also, even when you're using the handle, it kind of center of balance is not where the handle is, so it's kind of more in the rear of it. So, you know, what have you. It's a difficult set to move around, and any collector who has this set knows that to be absolutely true. So now that we have the lower superstructure portions on too, just have to make sure that all the pieces are correct, and then we can move on to our final step of maintenance. We've reached the end of our journey, so it's time to put away the electric duster, though of course I left it out again. What can I say? When I used to do this entire set just with a maker brush, that was an experience. It took forever, but it's nice to have some last minute touch-ups by using it again. The Dyson brush helps a lot, but there's something satisfying about going in by hand one last time for our last brushing. Just making sure the turrets are all facing forward. They love to shift around while cleaning. And as we move the Star Destroyer a little in front of the camera, we'll take a final check at the back. Mainly the engines. I try not to mess with them too much because, you know, if they fall off, it's a whole process to get back on, and I'd rather not pause a video to fix it. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more cleaning videos, and check out the other kinds of Lego content that we have on this channel. And then we'll do the Star Destroyer one last spin. Very slow, but worth it. And see you next time.